This video is kindly sponsored by Keeps, but more on them later on. Hey, 42 here. When I say the word soldier to you, what's the first thing that pops into your head? Tactical armor, sniper rifles, hand-to-hand combat? How about colorful pajamas? If you've ever visited Vatican City, the world's smallest country and the home of God's representative on Earth, you probably know where I'm going with this. Because the soldiers tasked with guarding the Pope, known as the Swiss Guard, do so by wearing what is very probably the most outlandish uniform of any military force in the entire world. But why exactly is the Pope protected by an elite force of Swiss blokes in clown outfits? I'm glad you asked. Now I want to take a brief moment and talk about hair loss, because I've had a few people close to me start to lose their hair as early as their 20s, and it's always an upsetting experience. If you're in the same boat, then you're not alone. Did you know 2 out of 3 guys will experience some form of male pattern baldness by the time they're 35? But the best thing you can do to prevent hair loss is take the initiative now and do something about it whilst you've still got hair left. I like Keeps because it makes treatment super easy by delivering your hair loss medication every 3 months directly to your door. So you can say goodbye to awkward doctor visits and waiting in pharmacy checkout lines. There's a reason that Keeps has more 5-star reviews than any of its competitors, and hundreds of thousands of men trust them for their hair loss prevention medication. If you're like me, you're probably not ready to lose your hair just yet, but prevention is key. The faster you act, the faster you'll see results, and the sooner you start using Keeps, the more hair you'll save. So, if you're noticing that you're losing your hair, do something about it. For a limited time, go to keeps.com/42, or click the link in the description below to receive 50% off your first order. The Swiss Guard is one of the most unique and intriguing military forces in operation today. For starters, it's one of the oldest standing armies in the world, having been founded more than 500 years ago. It's also one of the smallest, with just 135 members. But thanks to the Vatican's minuscule size, Swiss Guardsmen actually make up about 16% of the nation's total population. That means there's a genuine argument for Vatican City being the most militarized country on the entire planet. As for why the Pope is guarded by a Swiss army in the first place, well, whilst us European types like to poke fun at Switzerland for generally staying out of things in the face of war, it turns out that a few centuries ago, Switzerland boasted some of the most ruthless and efficient warriors alive. As a result, Swiss mercenaries were incredibly sought after, often being drafted in to bolster the armies of other nations across Europe. And it wasn't just their skill in battle that made Swiss mercenaries so coveted. They were also renowned for their insane bravery and unshakable loyalty, traits that made them ideal bodyguards for world leaders and other VIPs. And as I'm sure you'll agree, no P is more VI than the Pope. In the early 16th century, the stellar reputation of Swiss mercenaries caught the attention of Pope Julius II. Even amongst popes, Julius II was kind of a big deal. He established the Vatican museums that are still visited by millions of people today, over 500 years later. He approved plans to turn St. Peter's Basilica into the largest church in the world, a title it's held ever since. And he commissioned some random painter-decorator by the name of Michelangelo to spruce up the ceiling of the newly completed Sistine Chapel, whatever that is. Men of the stature of Pope Julius II inevitably earned themselves a few enemies on their rise to the top. And so, in 1505, he asked Switzerland if they wouldn't mind lending him 200 of their finest mercenaries to form his personal guard. Soon enough, the men were on their way. It's quite a long march from Switzerland to central Italy, but apparently all roads lead to Rome, so at least there was no chance of getting lost. Still, it took a good 4 months for this elite fighting force to complete the journey. The Swiss soldiers arrived on the 22nd of January, 1506. And they've been there pretty much ever since. As for why they wear uniforms that look like they were designed by a 5-year-old on acid, the reason is actually pretty simple. The bright colour scheme was chosen to reflect the house colours of two of Italy's most important noble families at the time, the Della Roveres and the Medicis, both of whom had supplied the Catholic Church with several popes over the years. And whilst the various archaic elements of the uniforms may look pretty ridiculous to the modern eye, it was fairly standard stuff during the Renaissance when they were first worn. I'm no Tom Ford, but I think it's safe to say 500 years is enough to make even the most conservative of fashion choices look a little outdated. The Swiss Guard uniform holds the distinction of being the heaviest military uniform currently in use, weighing in at over 3.5 kilograms. And it's so eye-catching that Swiss Guards stationed near roads aren't allowed to wear them for fear of distracting motorists and causing traffic accidents. Each uniform is made up of 154 individual pieces, and every set is tailor-made for the soldier who wears it, a process that takes around 32 hours across 3 individual fittings. The weapons of the Swiss Guard are similarly old school, mostly consisting of halberds and a variety of swords. You may have heard that Michelangelo was responsible for the uniform's original design, but I'm afraid that's a myth spread in part by American author Dan Brown. Although, coincidentally, parts of the modern version of the uniform, which was redesigned in 1914, were based on frescoes painted by Michelangelo's Renaissance rival and fellow Ninja Turtle, Raphael. By now you might be thinking the Swiss Guard, with their silly outfits and medieval weapons, are a bit of a joke, a mock military force that's more for show than anything else. But before you have any ideas about getting some mates together to initiate a hostile takeover of Vatican City and declare yourself Pope, I should point out that underneath the mental uniforms, Swiss Guardsmen are actually elite soldiers who undergo rigorous special training. The uniforms I've been talking about so far are only used for ceremonial purposes and to impress the tourists. When the Swiss Guard are engaged in more traditional soldiering and other Pope protection duties, they wear modern uniforms and swap the medieval weaponry for high-tech firearms and pepper spray. In short, you really don't want to mess with them. Over the centuries, the Swiss Guard have had a fair few chances to demonstrate just how tough they are, but probably their most famous military engagement came just a couple of decades after they were founded. In 1527, 20,000 soldiers belonging to Holy Roman Emperor Charles V stormed the city of Rome, looting and pillaging as they went. Charles V was a member of the House of Habsburg, by the way. Long-term viewers of the channel will be pleased to hear he did indeed have a truly gargantuan chin. I should probably mention that whilst the rampaging soldiers were part of Charles V's army, they weren't actually sacking Rome on his orders. The men had gone rogue after payment of their salaries was delayed. Union disputes have gotten a lot less dramatic in the past 500 years, haven't they? Anyway, Rome's garrison numbered around 5,000 men at the time, meaning the city's defenders were outnumbered 4-1. Luckily, they had an ace up their collective sleeve: 189 elite Swiss guardsmen. As Charles V's soldiers swept through the city, slaughtering and stealing left, right, and centre, the Swiss Guard prepared to defend the Supreme Pontiff Clement VII. The resulting battle has since become known as the Stand of the Swiss Guard. Of the 189 guardsmen in the Pope's employ at the time, 147 held first the Teutonic Cemetery and then the steps of St. Peter's Basilica against thousands of attackers. They signed up for the Swiss Guard knowing they might have to give their lives to protect the Pope, and that time had come. Sure enough, by the end of the day, all 147 guardsmen were dead. But that didn't mean the stand of the Swiss Guard had ended in failure. You see, the men had known full well there was no chance of victory. There were simply too many enemies, and sheer weight of numbers would eventually tell. But the guards weren't fighting to win. They gave their lives to buy time. Because whilst they fought to the death outside the basilica, the remaining 42 guardsmen, yes, 42, led the Pope to an 800-meter long secret passageway known as Pasito di Borgo that links Vatican City to the Castel San Angelo to this day. There, Clement VII successfully made his escape. He remained Pope until his death 7 years later. If all of this sounds interesting to you, and you're keen to try and join this elite band of colourfully clad badasses, I'm afraid you're out of luck. Or at least you probably are, because the requirements to join the Swiss Guard are incredibly strict. For starters, the name isn't just for show. You literally do have to be Swiss to join, which rules out 99.999% of the world's population right off the bat. Not that simply being Swiss is enough, of course. Not by a long shot. Those wanting to join the Swiss Guard need first to have completed basic training with the Swiss Army. They also need to be male and between the ages of 19 and 30, at least 174 centimeters tall, and unmarried. Oh, and they have to be Catholic, obviously. If you do happen to be Swiss, tall, young, unmarried, Catholic, and in possession of one standard issue penis, then congratulations. You've won the Swiss Guard lottery. Unfortunately, I'm afraid this particular lottery doesn't pay very well. The salary for a Swiss Guard is €1,300 per month. Tax-free, that's about €400 below the national post-tax average salary in Italy, and almost €3,500 lower than the national average in Switzerland, a country that's regularly ranked in the top 3 nations worldwide for the average post-tax income. On the plus side, the Swiss Guard does have one of the best retirement plans in the entire world. You'll almost certainly get to go to heaven. So maybe it isn't such a bad career choice after all. Thanks for watching.